The genocide is in your phone. You go through social media, you see it every day. It is the normalization of it.
Mm.
That makes me very angry
Mm.
because it feels as if today it's the Palestinians, tomorrow it might be someone else.
Of course.
What kind of humanity are we, what kind of example are we giving to the younger generation?
Absolutely right.
Genocide.
And it's very powerful. You're right. My sense, um, if I can offer a response, is to almost to filter out the bigger picture. I think the bigger picture can often become overwhelming. One thing, just to go back to this book, which is what we're talking about, one thing that's very important for me is that this book, usually when an author finishes a book and then you speak about the book, it's like an ending, right? That's not the case with this. For me, and this is a message I was trying to also bring across, both of us were, to audiences that we were speaking to. This is a beginning. All the people, most of the people in this book, I'm sorry to say most of the people, not all, are still alive. And there's some of them are still in Gaza, some are in Cairo, some are in London, some are in America, some are in Qatar, some are in different places in South Africa, whatever. But they're all, they're real people. They're real people, and they have real. One thing that we were bringing across to audiences was to people ask us, what can we do? We're seeing this genocide playing out on our screens, and it feels overwhelming, and we feel hopeless, and everything feels bleak. One response is to take this book and to find the people who are in it. They're all online. They have Instagram accounts, they have Facebook accounts, or they have Twitter or Blue Sky, whatever it is. They're accessible, and they're findable, and they're real people with real lives, real stories. Go find them.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We are actually live from three different time zones, from Jerusalem, from India, and from UK. And with this, my name is Dr. Shuddha Chaudhary. This is Middle East Insights platform, and today we are doing a book discussion on the book Daybreak in Gaza: Stories of Palestinian Lives and Culture, which is edited by the two experts that we have here, Mahmoud Muna, who is joining us from Jerusalem, and Matthew Teller, who is joining us from UK. And a brief introduction, and yes, all of that. Please like and subscribe and all of that. And that's the book. Please do buy it. It's available on Amazon. I just checked it. So our two authors, editors are Mahmoud Muna is a writer, publisher, bookseller from Jerusalem, Palestine. He runs Jerusalem's celebrated Educational Bookshop and Bookshop at the American Colony Hotel, both center of the city's literary scene. Muna writes regularly on culture and politics with bylines in London Review of Books and Jerusalem Quarterly, among others. He recently published the first ever Arabic edition of Granta magazine. Shukran Habibi for doing it.
Thank you.
Now, we also have Matthew Teller with us. He's a UK-based author and broadcaster. And you can see his entire, what do you say, montage, not montage, but the entire props behind him and the posters. We're going to discuss about it.
This is my real life behind me. These are not props.
I'm very envious of it. And
you have a good bookshelf behind you as well. That's good.
No. We have to look up to yours. And he's a broadcaster writing on place and culture with a special focus on Palestine and wider Middle East. His book in 2022, 9 Quarters of Jerusalem, a new biography of the old city, was a Daily Telegraph Book of the Year. He produces and presents documentaries for BBC Radio 4 and World Service and reports for BBC Radio from our own correspondent. His journalism is published by the BBC, Guardian, Independent Times, Financial Times, amongst others. He is also the author of Quite Alone, Journalism from the Middle East 2008 to 2019, and several travel guides, including Rough Guide to Jordan. Along with that, Juliet Toma is the Director of Communications for UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in Near East, covering Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. Tuma travels frequently to Gaza from UNRWA headquarters in Amman in Jordan. Jayab Abu Safia is a London-based journalist from Jabalia refugee camp in north of Gaza, which is right now, as we speak, in a massive and barbaric siege, with no food supplies being accessible to specifically the north of Gaza. He was formerly Sky News Arabia senior reporter in London and a senior news presenter at Al Ghad TV. He was a nominee for Index on Censorship's Freedom of Expression Awards. So with this, I would like to welcome all of you to today's talk. And
thank you. Could I just sort of jump in just very quickly, just to clarify that at the moment on this call, we have me, Matthew, and my colleague Mahmoud. The other two editors who you mentioned, Juliet and Jayab, are not with us. So just to be clear. But they were involved in the preparation of the book, for sure.
And how long did it take to prepare this book?
It was... I'll answer first, and then I'm sure Mahmoud will come in as well. It was actually very quick. The book arose because we were independently. We knew each other. I've known Mahmoud for many years, and also Juliet previously as well. But we were looking at the news this time last year, October and November of last year, when the genocide was just starting. Obviously horrified, in shock and horror, and I was in the UK. I was marching in the street, and I was writing and speaking and whatever, but none of it felt impactful. And because I'm a writer and a journalist, the industry that I'm associated with is media and publishing, and I was very frustrated because I could see that this is an industry. I was saying to myself, I remember the conversations that I had with myself back a year ago. This is an industry that's full of creative people who are innovative and are able to come up with new ideas or new ways of presenting ideas, or, to reach a wide public. And nobody was really saying or doing anything. There was no movement, there was no opposition, there was no public statements at that time in particular. There's very few even now, in opposition to the genocide, to what Israel was doing in Gaza. And I felt that frustration very deeply. I know that Mahmoud, when he comes in, he'll also speak as well for himself, but he was feeling that as well in Palestine too. And the idea came to try and do something ourselves, to try and overcome that inertia ourselves by platforming and amplifying the voices of the people of Gaza who were not being listened to. We were hearing opinions on Gaza from everybody, from the West, from the East, from Washington, from London, from Brussels, from Berlin, from Delhi, and from places all over the world where had opinions about Gaza, but we were not hearing from the people of Gaza themselves, or very little. So the idea of this project was to platform them. So it was a process there was some resistance, obviously, from publishing in London as well. When we were proposing this book, we had a lot of rejections. We had ridiculous excuses given as rejections as well. This is the wrong time for a book like this, or, we don't think there's a market for a book like this, or, these sorts of excuses. And we were also being both sided as well. So one publisher said to us, what everybody really wants is an insider account from both sides. which is appalling and shameful and horrendous. We found a very good publisher. Saki is a small independent publisher in London who they have a long track record in publishing fiction and non-fiction from the Middle East and from the Arab and Islamic world. And they understood immediately what we were trying to do, and they facilitated it. So we were working on gathering voices, gathering not just war diaries and testimonies, but essays and memoirs and recipes and accounts of life for several months in the first part of this year. The book went to print in the summer. In July, I think it went to print, and then it was published in October. So that's very quick for publishing. Publishing doesn't move that fast usually. Yeah. So that was the sort of genesis of this book. That's how it came about. Mahmoud, do you want to chip in there?
Muna, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it's the urgency of the book is what I wanted to highlight here. This speed was all manufactured really by us because we wanted to get the message out. We felt that there is a lack of a layer on reporting on Gaza, particularly from perspective of the Gazans, but from the perspective of the human beings in Gaza, without the big geopolitics and the political analysis and the kind of voice of God kind of conversation that journalists and politicians were having on Gaza. We also wanted to document the society as it's being destroyed. People make cities. Cities are made out of people, not from stones. So as the city has been undergoing this annihilation, if you like, we wanted to also document life in Gaza as it was and as it is before the destruction. So we're working fast. We knew also that some of the people we were interested in interviewing were also potentially at risk. No one is safe in Gaza, what we were always hearing. So we also speeded up the process of interviewing, translating, transcribing, and editing the book, working long hours every day continuously. And I hope we have dealt with this task, which is, of course, important, but is also huge. There's thousands of books should have been written and should be written about Gaza. We are producing one. I hope we have professionally and ethically and morally have dealt with these stories.
And so, how difficult was it for you to actually gain access to Gazans?
The access was limited as it goes. When we started in January, February, March, we still were able to get people into phones lines. We're still able to have, I don't want to say regular, but we could have every other day, daily communication with some of the people we're doing interviews with. As we moved into April and May, people started to move, areas started to get crowded, internet started to drop. It became harder and harder and harder. And that's when our interviews started to come into the shapes of recorded voice notes on WhatsApp. So we send the questions and when we wait for the answers, some people write something, but the interviews was not one at a certain time in a certain method. We started to have a very kind of piecemeal kind of interviews. And that's also added even more urgency and more importance, and more sense of importance to what we're doing. And we're really grateful for people who got out of their way to really make sure they are communicating with us and they are sending us their stories. I remember this person I was talking to, and the line was very bad, and he said, "Look, call me at midnight. I will move somewhere where there is internet and we can have a better conversation time." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's what you wanted, I guess, as someone who's doing interviews." But only a minute later, it occurred to me that someone is actually willing to move during genocide at night in wartime, which is the height of the risk, if you like, somewhere where there is internet, just so he can talk to me. That still gives me really shiver that people were risking their life basically to speak to us. And that speaks about the urgency and the importance that people in Gaza saw in actually the need to talk to the world. A time when the world has turned the deaf eyes on them and their stories, they actually wanted to talk to people. And I think there's a lot of humanity to learn in this.
Yeah, it is. And also, like Matthew, sir, talking about, the surveillance system. It's worse for Mahmoud Muna, sir. And it's even worse for you in terms of looking at the level of surveillance that telephonic conversations that you both might have been scrutinized.
It's a good point. Yes, it's much more relevant in this sense for Mahmoud than it is for me. I'm in the UK where the levels of surveillance of communications are lower, are less intrusive than they are in Palestine.
Exactly.
Mahmoud, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think we can talk about this and make ourselves important, but let's remember we're talking to people who are literally, we have some of their recorded messages, audio recorded messages, and the bomb are failing around them. They are the real heroes. They are the one that really taking risk. They are the one that actually are the more important part of this project than us. So, in all honestly, we can talk about all of this, but I don't think I have the right to speak about my personal safety or sense of safety in times when actually people not knowing if they're going to wake up the next day or not, regardless of where they are in Gaza.
Let me. Oh, sorry, go on.
Sure, Matthew. But
let me just relate one of the stories.
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, Mahmoud. I'm talking over you.
Right. Go ahead, Matthew.
Okay, I'm sorry. And let me just tell you one of these stories. I'm going to play you off my phone. I'll play you one of these messages that we received from one of the contributors to the book. She is Amani Shaltut. She's the director of the United Nations, the UNRWA photo archive in Gaza City. And we were put in touch with her through networks of people. And I sent her a bunch of questions by text, and she chose to reply by voice. And she sent us a series of voice notes in reply. This is a clip which I'll play. It's a short clip. It's only 1 minute. But this was recorded by her in displacement. So she was displaced from Gaza City to Nusayrat, which is a refugee camp south of Gaza City. And she wanted to answer some of the questions which I put. One of the questions I asked her was, what's your favorite image in the archive that you take care of in Gaza City? And she answers that in this clip as well. But as Mahmoud says, what you can hear behind her voice is not only can you hear Israeli drones which are circling overhead with a constant sort of buzzing noise. These are some of these are surveillance drones. Some of them are attack drones where they'll shoot. They'll either drop bombs or they'll shoot from the air to kill people. But also she keeps on speaking. She is there sitting in her tent, recording into her phone to send to me. I think she recorded at night. I'm not sure exactly when she recorded. But that courage and the dedication to using me, if you like, as a means by which to have her voice heard in the world I find it incredibly moving. And her bravery and her commitment to speaking, I think really matters in this context. Can I play you this clip into the microphone?
Hi, and salam from Gaza. First of all, I wish you all the best in your book. About my favorite images are those about education, particularly those show children learning in open air or in the tents, where some of the pupils were sitting on the sands and they don't even have seats. Actually, for me, these images show the desire and a need to change for better and a kind of a challenge to all of these tough circumstances. And that mustn't be the fate forever. And as we used to say that education is the passport for our better future, and also it could be make us proud of the our identity. Many thanks for you and for all those who stand in solidarity with Gaza. It's really, really appreciated. And actually, what you are doing is a turning point in history.
It's amazing. It's amazing to have that as a document. It's amazing that that she was so determined to continue speaking. As Mahmoud says, these people, she is the hero. These people are the heroes, keeping this conversation alive.
Yeah, and why I asked the question on that was because storytelling obviously is very difficult under when you have a genocide going on. But from my own visit in 2016, we had photographers from UK who had come to West Bank, and the Israeli authorities took away their SD card, their camera, and all of it while they were returning after frisking them. And it was meant for an exhibition in London. And the photographer had really, gone out of his way to take images. But he wasn't. Like, imagine that a very expensive DSLR, an SD card full of so many memories, it is just not about material. It's also about the social nostalgia and the emotional aspect of it, the work, the labor, and all of it was taken away.
Yeah.
And
it's regrettably very, very common.
Yeah.
That the Israeli authorities will intervene, particularly with media, with journalists, but not only, also with the public as well.
Yeah, and right now, Mahmoud sir, what we get to know, because none of the journalists are allowed to report from West Bank or Gaza anymore. And you are in Jerusalem, which is the most vulnerable and fragile ecosystem to be in, along with Hebron. How do you think that, and you have stayed with books all your life, books are a part of your daily identity and labor. What was the feeling of trying to safeguard something that is getting erased in the most merciless manner? The story about your people, and to a certain extent, you can just write about it and do nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, for the lack of a better word, really. But let me say a few things here. One is, I hope this book, first and foremost, set on the long traditions of the Palestinians documenting their own story, because as hard as it is, and you struggle there with words, because it is almost impossible to describe it. We always said that since the beginning of this war, I have many of my writers repeating almost the same word all the time, saying words are deserting us. Words are simply not enough. But images were not enough as well, and images were also lacking the emotions necessary. So as difficult as it is, yet it is our duty as Palestinians, and that's why I'm saying this is, I hope this book live in these traditions of the Palestinian documenting their story, because what we cannot afford is another international journalist or writers or historians or whatever to actually write about this with the lack of the Palestinian voice. It is important for the Palestinians to snatch back, and I'm using the word intentionally, to snatch back this right to narrate and to tell our own story in our ways, in our words, in our emotions, in our language in the broader sense of the word. So that's one. Second, as I was working on this book, I had the Nakba of 1948 in my mind all the time, and that's not me. So of course, a lot of us have been comparing what's happening to Gaza as another major event that's almost larger than the catastrophe or the Nakba of 1948. But what was important here is to highlight the effect of this disaster or of this assault on the society. Not just buildings are being destroyed and not just people are being killed, which is, of course, the most expensive of loss, but it's also a society is being undone, literally. There's also a whole culture is being erased. And here, as we should do what we can to stop it, but if it continues, we should also pay some attention to document it. And documenting these stories is the least we can have in honor of the people, in honor of the city, but also to document where the Palestinian society in Gaza were before the genocide. A lot of the times when you refer to the Nakba of 1948, the Israeli prominent kind of narrative is that the Palestinians before 48 were a bunch of farmers and shepherds, and there's no disrespect to anyone, but that's basically the lack of sophistication and the lack of collective Palestinian organization. That's what the Israelis try to highlight, as if the Palestinians did not have a normal, sophisticated, orchestrated cultural and social and political life before 48. And this is the point that I hopefully I'm making sense here. But what I'm trying to say is we wanted to say at some point, it will be important to say that before Israel genocide on Gaza, the Palestinians in Gaza, despite the difficulties and despite the siege and despite everything, they were having a sophisticated social, cultural, economic, educational, health life, sport, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And despite everything, the society was a beautiful, collective, caring, loving, giving society as well. And it wasn't just a bunch of refugees living in makeshift houses in a refugee camps and so on and so forth. This is very important because part of the dehumanization of the Palestinians is to downgrade them as a non-sophisticated collectives, which by that means that they do not deserve any collective identity or any collective political solutions as well. So this was the important drive, despite the hardship and the pain. It was the power, if you like, that was in my pen and other people, I'm sure, as we were documenting these stories.
Matthew, sir.
And what was very important, I feel, as well, was to document these stories now. So to try and use the networks that the four of us as editors and also the publisher as well had in order to document what was happening today and not, as so often happens, in retrospect. So in a time after, whenever the genocide is finished and there is, I don't know, maybe rebuild or whatever's going to happen after, then trying to look back and then trying to retrace the steps and to try and tell the stories looking back. That's what we were trying not to do. We were trying to take advantage of what we could do now, right now. There was I felt a real moral imperative to act, to see what we are seeing on our screens and to do something useful about it. And I want to platform, in all of this, I want to platform people's voices from Gaza. Let me just read a very short piece from the book, if that's all right.
Yes, yes.
This is by a man called Yusuf al-Khoury, who he was born in Gaza in the 80s, 86, I believe. And he is a theologian, a Christian theologian. He now lives and works, for various reasons, he had to leave Gaza. He now lives and works in Bethlehem in Palestine. And he very generously gave us a long and amazingly insightful and resourceful interview, within which he said this, quote, "Today, I think I'm in a phase of depression or denial over what's happening in Gaza. It is simply too much to process. I'm grieving that the Christian community, which has such a long history in Gaza, is disappearing. not as part of a natural progression, but because of ethno-religious cleansing by the occupiers. We have been misrepresented as bloodthirsty, illiterate terrorists, but we are not. We are a beautiful, life-loving, caring community that will host you, feed you, and protect you. The world needs Gazans, people who refuse to give in to despair, who will always find a way to prevail. You cannot erase Gaza. You can occupy Gaza. You can destroy Gaza, but you will never take it away from us. It's the same as in 1948, when the colonizers tried to erase Palestine from our memory and failed. Now they are trying again. We will not give up. We will not give in. We will always rebuild Gaza in our memories, in our imaginations, and in our hearts, until one day we will rebuild Gaza for real. Unquote.
You know, something which I learned from my Palestinian friends, and most of them are in West Bank. It's this kind of indomitable spirit, which we often in our own time and space get bogged down by so many little challenges on an everyday basis. Here, the challenges are beyond time and space. And the optimism, it is very difficult. For example, when just Donald Trump was elected, one of my friends, I just asked him that, what's the situation right now? He said, 12 more checkpoints at Ramallah now. And then he said, but Habibti, it's good. At least for 2 days they didn't fire. And I was like, seriously, come on. I mean, I was very teary-eyed. But he was trying to actually cheer me up.
Yeah.
That was something. And also a professor from Gaza whom we interviewed, I wanted to blur her face. She said no. Initially, we thought we'll have a one-to-one discussion like I'm having right now. We were not able to do because of the internet connection. It took her, I think, 45 minutes to send one video clip of 3 minutes. And she spent 7 hours sending clips.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're saying, I think, is true. I'm sure Mahmoud will come in as well. There are 2 points to make here, and they're both the kind of flip side of each other. One is that, yes, of course, sumud is a known concept in relation to Palestinian societies. Sumud is a very difficult word to translate. Mahmoud can do this better than me. But very often it's related in English as being steadfastness, that people have a sort of a core resilience that keeps them going despite everything. That's true. But it's also very important, and this was also emphasized to us by the people that we spoke to in Gaza and outside Gaza, that the people under the bombs they're not extreme. They're not monsters as painted by Israel. Not everybody is a terrorist, everybody deserves to die, whatever. There's this extreme, but there's also the extreme where somehow they're characterized as superheroes, where they can resist anything and they can take anything that anyone can throw at them and still survive. It's not true. They're human beings. They're flesh and blood, just like us. And when somebody shoots them or drops a bomb on their head, they die.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us being outsiders to hold 2 or 3 or 4 things simultaneously in our minds. Yes, steadfastness is really important, but these people are not superhuman. And we shouldn't be treating them as superhuman. They deserve the same rights, respect, care, attention, love, nurturing, cherishing as any other humans on the planet as well. Too often they don't get it. Hope is really important. Hope was another aspect of this book that really shone through from almost everybody that we spoke to. Mahmoud, I'm going to let you come in here because we can talk about hope a lot, I'm sure.
Yes, I mean, just to refer back to your point, Matthew, correctly, the Palestinians have been suffering from a lot of dehumanization. but also treating them as superheroes is also another form of dehumanization as well.
Yes.
Because if they're not subhumans, they're above humans as well. And I think the regions, actually, the whole Israel-Palestine conflict suffer a lot from a language of uniqueness and a language of exclusivity, and we'll do much better in this conflict, in a conversation about this conflict, without anything special and anything unique and anything beyond normal. I think this is quite a classic settler colonial conflict, and the Palestinians are pretty much colonized like everyone else in the history, and they're trying to find colonialism in the means that they are available to them, and the colonizers are trying to perfect their colonization like anyone else in the world. And we should really keep a view of this that way. Otherwise, the overcomplication and the over dehumanization doesn't really serve the purpose of understanding, rather the opposite. Hope is also a very important concept to throw in here, because I think we owe it to the people who are hoping in a life change, in a better world, and they hope to leave their tents, they hope to go back to their houses, they hope to have safe nights in the future. We owe it to them to also remain hopeful, even if our brains and our intellect is telling us that geopolitically, with the region, with what's happening now, with Trump and other factors, even if our intellect is telling us it's going to be a difficult ride coming ahead, we have to keep hope as part of the equation as well, because we cannot afford losing hope. Maybe we can if we live in a privileged societies, but here in Palestine, whether in Jerusalem or in the West Bank, or definitely in Gaza, being hopeless is not an option. It's not an option, because it removes any prospect of life and meaning of life as well. And I think that's actually the undermining reason why, to my surprise, in a way, to my surprise, should I say, many Gazans really were willing to speak to us. They really wanted to speak to us. And if it wasn't for hope, then why they are talking to us? Someone might ask that question. They're talking to us because they're hoping that if they get their story correctly, if they get their message across to a reasonable human being, whether in Delhi or in London or New York, that person is reasonable and human enough to act according to this new information that is being learned. And they will change their political opinion in a way that it will improve lives in Gaza. That is the hope, and we can't afford to lose it, even in the most bleak of times. I maybe finish my answers here with a quote from Mahmoud Darwish, who spoke about cultivating hope. The concept of cultivating hope, it's a powerful one. It's not something you pick up from the shelf or you buy from your local supermarket. You plant hope, you seed it, you plant it, you water it, you nourish it, and then you pick it up, and then you enjoy it, and then you have a hope. It's a process of being hopeful as well. And I think there's a difference on how developed nation, if you like, or West, I should say, Western people would refer to hope, rather than to people who are on the other side of the colonization process. That the hope seems to have a different definition between both.
Yeah, and
that's something that we found actually when we were touring, Mahmoud and I. Sorry, I talked over you.
No. Okay, we don't have to keep. It's very British of you to keep apologizing. Please don't. You can continue. Yes.
Okay, I'll thank you. I just wanted to follow up on what Mahmoud is saying. We were lucky enough to be able to do some dates on a promotional tour supporting this book immediately after publication around Europe, around Britain, and cities in Europe as well. And it was very interesting how those audiences responded to like this quote from Mahmoud Darwish about we cultivate hope. The idea of cultivating hope is very powerful. And there's another quote I can throw in as well. This is from Edward Said. He said, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but he said, in a situation of cruelty and injustice, hopelessness is submission, and to submit is immoral. And that also is another very powerful thing. And the audiences that we were talking to around Britain and around Europe, this idea of being hopeless as a privilege that the Palestinian people can't afford, and people elsewhere, colonized people everywhere, they can't afford to be hopeless. Because if you're hopeless, it's the end of everything. So you cultivate hope. So you take care of hope, and you nurture it, and it's there, and you look after it, and you make sure that it is growing all the time in your life and in the lives of people around you. This idea was very unfamiliar to a lot of British and European audiences, which I thought was very, very interesting. I think it shows a difference in perspective between in the baldest terms, a colonizing society and a colonized society.
And how was the encounter in UK? I know in pockets the response will be different depending where in UK you're having the book discussion.
Oh yeah,
very much. But in Europe is completely a different ball game.
It can be, yes. Yeah, it depends where we were. One thing that stuck in my head was we had, I don't know what it was about 10 days or so around England. It was actually only England. So there were some dates in London, but then also smaller cities outside London in the north, and a couple of very small places, which was very interesting. A lot of it were in bookshops, so we were speaking to bookshop audiences, some of whom were familiar with Palestine, some of whom were not. But then we gave a couple of talks in Scotland, in Glasgow and in Edinburgh, which is all part of the UK, obviously. But to my mind, the audiences in Scotland were very, very different, particularly in Glasgow. Much more aware, much more plugged in, much more conscious of the underlying issues that have led to genocide in Gaza, and the some of the basic ideas that we were going over when we were speaking to English audiences, we didn't have to do to Scottish audiences, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, also we spoke in Berlin and we spoke in Amsterdam as well, and smaller cities in the north of Europe, and also in Rome and Naples in the south of Europe as well. The Italian audiences were also fascinating, many students, but there was a really, really strong left-wing perspective. So we were speaking often to audiences where communists or members of the Communist Party in Italy, or different factions of communism, were very prominent, and moving from there to then speaking to places like the European Parliament in Brussels was like chalk and cheese, was like two different universes. But it was very, very interesting and very rewarding to take that message, the message of the people of Gaza entrusted us with, to all these different places, was an absolute privilege. It was extraordinary. It felt very humbling, actually.
But I think it's also important here to also speak about the word is changing. This genocide has
absolutely
changed, where in previously some places you would get less of a welcoming reception than others. But also Europe is changing. Western Europe is also changing vis-a-vis Israel-Palestine. And I think we need to start to change our perception that we are the minority, or we are the kind of lefty, radical, kind of angry people. I don't think we are anymore. I think the price is too high, of course, for that shift. 45,000, as we speak today, 45,000 people believed to have lost their lives, if not more, in Gaza. But the change in Europe is tangible. You can see it, and it's felt, and I think it's fundamental, and I think it probably will be a game changer for in 1 or 2 generations. And that's should have happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. It should have happened when the occupation started, if you ask me. But the fact that it's happening now is renewed our hope and our belief in humanity, in reasonability, in people, and yet we hope this change will, if you like, affect the political elites and the real corridors of power in Western Europe. And we should not undermine the global South as well. The word is not just few countries in Western Europe. and North America. The word is much bigger than that, and the solidarity for Palestine has been galvanizing a movement all around the world, particularly in the global South. And whether it's in India or Brazil, I mean, these are emerging powers, important key players in the world politics, but also, above all, they're also equal human beings, and their support to us as Palestinians, even if it doesn't change or move the needles, even if that still is important for us, because it is shared humanity is what we share with India and Brazil and other places in the world, including Europe. So I think that's also important to highlight. We're not the minority.
Yeah, you're not. In fact, in India, as of today, 600 postcards were sent to the Indian Prime Minister's office demanding that Indian Parliament must stand with Palestine. And there's a massive campaign that has been started by members of Bengaluru for Justice and Peace. And over the period of time, there are a lot of Joe Sacco, for example, was in Delhi for some time. And in Delhi, any kind of, and I'll not edit this out. In Delhi, for the past 1 year, any kind of protest or any kind of even a meeting on Palestine has been very, very sporadic because of various kinds of controls. When Joe Sacco came, there were, I think, 2,000, 3,000 people who came to listen to him. And for the first time, the entire hall, it just uproared with "Long Live Palestine," which was a kind of culture that I was missing for a very long time. As an academic and activist, there has been times when I have gone on protests for Palestine, and a few Israeli, women have come out from SUVs and thrown the postcard on my face. And I used to be so numb that what just happened, couldn't process it. But things are changing here.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the representatives of the Congress party, Priyanka Gandhi, for example, she wore, on the first day of the parliament, she wore a Palestinian bag which had a watermelon, the kafiyeh, a dove, and all of it. And can you imagine that it became a national debate? How
Good.
sorry state of affairs it is?
It's those sorts of public actions that lead to national debate, and they should be part of a national conversation. Exactly so.
And I didn't like what happened with the after December 7th, when Pope Francis went to the nativity scene where baby Jesus was wrapped up in a kafaya, and 2 artists from Bethlehem had organized that, and it was taken off. The massive backlash. I just don't understand it.
There's a backlash. There's a backlash, of course, because for years the Israeli narrative had a plain field, if you like. Their messages were spread easily. They were controlling the messaging on Israel-Palestine, and India historically has stand with Palestine, but in the recent years it had gone under change, like many other countries as well. But now the public is changing the discourse, and of course there is people who are not happy about that, and they're gonna try to stop us, and they're gonna try to criminalize us, and they're gonna try to torpedo the movement. But it will not, because I think Palestine issues is not anymore a Palestine issue. It's an issue of global interest, because it trigger issues of freedom, of liberty, of human rights, of children's rights, and many people can relate to Palestine struggle in different ways, and that's why the solidarity around Palestine is having a global outlook to it, and that's great. It adds to our challenge, of course, on how to turn this into a political and to gain a political means for this global solidarity. That's a question that the Palestinians have to grapple with. But it's that change, I think, is here to stay, and a whole new generation of students, whether in school or universities, will emerge, will grow up with the question of Palestine, and it will stay with them. And I think they would act constructively on it in the coming years. I don't think we have to look behind anymore when we're advocating the Palestinian struggle. We have to be sharp. We have to be forward moving, but we also have to keep our ethical and moral principles that we are advocating for humanity and justice and freedom and liberty and equal rights and so on. Those should be our ethical principles, that we should not deviate from them. And we should not get into the dark corners of nationalism and ethnicity and so on. And we should remain having the higher moral grounds on these discussions.
Yeah. Matthew, sir.
There was a young woman who spoke to us from Egypt. She's called Saba Timraz. And she survived for 184 days inside Gaza with her sister. Her parents happened to be outside on October the 7th last year. And she survived inside until the family was able to gather together $10,000, or exactly what the number was, in order to pay off the Egyptians, in order to allow her to leave. She's now in Cairo. She's a young woman. She's a student, 20 years old. And she wrote for us, for this book, an original essay. I just want to read you a little bit as well.
Yes,
I'm thinking always of the voices of the people that we've talked to. This is part of what she wrote. Quote, "Thank God I left Gaza after 184 days of this brutal war. I left Gaza, but it did not leave me. Rather, my attachment to it and my love for it grew. And now we wait for the unknown while Gaza continues counting the days. We now live in Egypt without residency, with no idea what the future holds. There are countless hurdles. I need to enroll at a university here to complete my studies. My sister, who is in the 11th grade in Gaza, needs to restart school. It's not easy to lose everything and to start your life again in another country. I am a displaced refugee. My heart is broken. I am dead, but trapped in life. Has our life become a game, controlled by America and the occupier? They kill, destroy, and do whatever they can to harm us, and then tell the world that they are the victims and we are the monsters. We are an occupied people, and have been since 1917. Our lands were stolen, our honor was violated, and the building blocks of our lives were destroyed. We want to be liberated and to live in freedom and dignity. We will not surrender our rights, no matter how long it takes." Unquote.
It's good that she talks about 1917, because Lord Balfour himself was very shrewd in terms of, he was very against having Jews coming to England.
Balfour was an anti-Semite. Balfour was a racist and anti-Semite. And there's no doubt about it. He made quite explicit statements in other contexts. He was anti-black. He was anti-Irish. He was a white supremacist.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of be it Shaftesbury or Rothschild and Balfour and many others. The entire my problem, and what makes me very angry. And sometimes the anger leads to also me crying. My anger is that we are in 2023-24, now 2025. It is not the time where something is happening in some part of the world and you do not have the access or agency to know, and you're dependent on traditional media. The genocide is in your phone. You go through social media, you see it every day. It is the normalization of it. That makes me very angry. Because it feels as if today it's the Palestinians, tomorrow it might be someone else.
Of course.
What kind of humanity are we, what kind of example are we giving to the younger generation?
But I think you're absolutely right. And it's very powerful. You're right. My sense, if I can offer a response, is to almost to filter out the bigger picture. I think the bigger picture can often become overwhelming. I think it's very important to focus on action. I think it's very important to take in the horror of what is happening, but not to allow ourselves to be reduced to impotence because of it. I think it's very important to act, especially in a situation of genocide. One thing, just to go back to this book, which is what we're talking about, One thing that's very important for me is that this book, usually when an author finishes a book and then you speak about the book, it's like an ending, right? You've done all your research and you've spent 2 years or 3 years writing or whatever it is. You've come to an end. This is a final product. That's not the case with this. For me, and this is a message I was trying to also bring across, both of us were, to audiences that we were speaking to. This is a beginning. All the people, most of the people in this book, I'm sorry to say most of the people, not all, are still alive. And some of them are still in Gaza. Some are in Cairo, some are in London, some are in America, some are in Qatar, some are in different places, in South Africa, whatever. But they're all, they're real people. They're real people and they have real lives. One thing that we were bringing across to audiences was to people ask us, what can we do? We're seeing this genocide playing out on our screens, and it feels overwhelming, and we feel hopeless, and everything feels bleak. One response is to take this book and to find the people who are in it. They're all online. They have Instagram accounts, they have Facebook accounts, or they have Twitter or Blue Sky, whatever it is. They're accessible, and they're findable, and they're real people with real lives, real stories. Go find them. Because a message for somebody who is in their tent in a desert part of Gaza, facing the drones and the bombs overhead, and the horror and the precarity of not knowing what on earth is going to happen and whether you're going to be dead or alive in the next hour, the next minute, to receive a message from somebody in Delhi or London or Brussels or wherever, saying, I saw this book, I saw your contribution in this book, your poem was beautiful, tell me more about it. Or you wrote this line in your essay, something about the beach. Tell me more about the beach. What do you remember of the beach? Receiving messages like this is where change comes, is my feeling. This is what Mahmoud was also talking about, where change comes from the people. This is not geopolitics. And we're not going to affect Israeli policy or the outlook of the United Nations or something. But what you're doing is changing people's lives. And if we can make a connection, that is where change, for me, is going to come from. So this book is a beginning, not an ending. And I think I think we can all use this and other examples as tools by which to start to deconstruct those overwhelming feelings of emotion that you were talking about that leave us unable to act. Paralyzed.
Thank you for telling me that methodology. And if today the students or whoever, because tomorrow I'm going to post this, if you order today, you should get in India by 9th of January, the book. So by Amazon. I don't know about Flipkart, but thank you for teaching that methodology.
You're very welcome. It's I'm not a teacher. I think it's an important message, not to be overwhelmed. I think that the issues, the quotes that we talked about previously about not allowing yourself to be hopeless, cultivating hope, and then using this as a beginning in order then to take action. We all have power to do that.
Yeah.
Because we all have a phone.
But it's also to encounter the dehumanization, because the simple act of one person connecting to another equal human being in Gaza and asking them the most simple of questions and get to know them and to make friends as if you're meeting in a cafe or whatever is the most beautiful act of humanization, because you are actually reaching that person because you believe they are humans and you ask them human questions and seeking human answers. And we are speaking about a very small place. I mean, there's 2 million people in Gaza. I'm aware I'm speaking to Indian audience. I mean, if we can forge globally some relationship with a few thousands people at least, then we are entering everyone's house, or at this point, everyone's tent. And we're having a direct communication, because those people under genocide, we're not watching them just simply. And we are not just reporting on them as numbers. We are actually knowing their stories and knowing their lives. Unfortunately, this genocide also, the scale of it is we were not able to even get the names of those people who are killed every day, because every day there is another awful 100 people, 150 people adding to the list. We're not being able to know their names or to know their stories. We cannot do that. Me and Matthew cannot do that. We, the Palestinian, can't do that. The small media, we're working with this. We cannot. But the global support we can get from the world, trying to reach these people in their tents and to really know their stories, and then to challenge the narrative. Because when someone tells you this is what's happening in Gaza, then you can tell them, no, this is not what's happening in Gaza. I know, I have my friend in Gaza, and I talked to them yesterday, and they emailed me this and this and this and this. And now we are also kind of shortcutting all this circle about this compliance from the global media and mainstream media in the world that is telling an absolute lies daily on national TVs. If you can find your connection to Gaza directly, then this is also provide you with raw and honest and direct first-hand experiences and first-hand information from Gaza.
And that is, something, why I desperately wanted this book discussion. Because when I was growing up as a student, as an MPhil scholar in Jawaharlal Nehru University, we had a professor who is very pro-Israel, who taught me in very subtle ways that Palestinians don't know how to write. Why don't they have books? And me, because we are in such a, nascent age at that point of time, and also the putting the professor at a pedestal, I was like, yes, he has spent so many years, he might be right. And I was like, no, for God's sake, after a few years, I realized, no, that was not correct. It was definitely not correct. So I don't want that to happen to all the youngsters who are here watching.
God knows what else he have taught you of fake.
Well, exactly. No, I can, just in one line, we can say, yes, the Palestinians can write.
The
Palestinians have a long and noble literary tradition that goes back well beyond the 20th century, back for centuries past.
And this is something which I've thought about.
May I say here, we wrote the most best-selling book ever in history.
Oh, Jerusalem.
No, the Bible.
The Bible, yes.
Yeah, so actually...
yeah, the Bible is...
Right.
Yes.
People forget also that the Palestine and Bethlehem and Nazareth is a place birth of Jesus, and we not only are the place for the best-selling book, but we're also the place for the best revolutionary and the best person who dissent and who revolted against systems and oppressions and so on. So we actually have long traditions in writing, but also in being against the current and being on the revolutionary side of history.
Yeah, people actually go to the place in Bethlehem where he was born and kiss the floor. I'm going to add that image here. And, this is something, and for example, when the Israeli film exhibition was going to happen in November in India, a lot of very popular actors went ahead and started a signature campaign asking the ministry to cancel it. And then one of the cinematographers in Bombay, I had a conversation with, and he said, why do you want to cancel it? Why can't Palestinian make films? And I was like, do you really know how many Palestinian movies is Netflix canceling over the past few months? How can we? It's the amount of ignorance which is there, along with dehumanization, is catastrophic. And it can be because of Islamophobia, which is masked, massive Islamophobia, which is masked. And I have seen this in I have had friends, to be honest, who have had fought with me at a personal level, and I have lost a lot of friendships over the period of 1 year. I'm very thankful for that. But a lot of my friends who were very pro-Israel just because they were upper class Hindus. And now they call me and they say that, we didn't agree to you way back in 2016 or 17, but we agreed to you now. I said, I didn't give a shit then, I don't give a shit now. The point is, there's so much of the masked Islamophobia that is around us, which is being, no, you don't really know who Jews are. You don't even know where Israel is. You don't even know the size of it. You don't even know the corruption cases against Netanyahu. The second time he's going up today. You don't know anything. But just because you're Islamophobic, you don't even know about the Armenian quarters which are there. Just because you're Islamophobic, you're anti-Palestinian.
I think a lot of this, you're right, but I just want to open even the lens more. I don't think it is just Islamophobic. I think it has roots in ancient, if you like, or long established racism, particularly in the West, against anyone who is not European white, if you like. So it's even if it's Islamophobic as much as it is anti-Semitic as well, because of course all these supports in Europe to Israel, a lot of it is actually come from evangelical countries or from the Orbans of Hungary, or it also comes from essentially anti-Semitism as well. So it's more. It's really is Europe have not really dealt with an ancient old sickness that is against the other. And unfortunately, the Palestinians now are paying the price for that. Islamophobia is one face of it, but it's much more deep-rooted racism. And that's why I said, and we should maintain our higher moral grounds, that the Palestinian struggle has to fit into a wider lens of anti-colonialism, but anti-racism as well. And in that sense, the Palestinians have a bigger fish to fry, if you like, here. And that's why we need to utilize the international solidarity with us, because it is a big struggle, and it's not just struggle against Israeli superiority, but it's actually against European racism as well. And that's why places like India is essential for our struggle as well, because we can relate, we share history with colonialism, and we should also share alliances in our anti-colonial struggle as well.
No, it is completely. And Christmas, for example, Christmas it's a synthesis of Jewish Palestinian heritage. And it has to be seen with that lens, not just about Santa Claus coming to town. So the point is that, and I don't know, over the period of time, I've learned how to, but you might have seen those instincts of anger in me. I have learned how to calm myself over the period of time, over 10 years, 12 years. Now, no, actually, it's going to be 15 years now. But it still is an acquired taste. It doesn't come naturally to me to be calm. And I also want to ask you the story behind the poster behind you of Visit
There's
Palestine.
a poster. Before we get to the poster, I'm just having a quick look in the chat, and I can see that is it Anugia?
Yeah, Anugia is asking a question.
Asking. She says, thank you. But like you, words haven't felt enough to talk about this country and the consequences of colonization and genocide the people are dealing with. So my question is, where to start? It's a tough question, where to start writing. I can't advise you exactly where to start writing, but I would say your perspective is needed. A perspective from India on Palestine, but also your particular perspective, whatever you can bring to this conversation, global conversation, if you like, is required. So I would only try and encourage you to say, formulate your thoughts on colonization, genocide. It is a huge topic. It's too big to take on in one go. But as I was trying to say before, with filtering out the geopolitical ramifications and focusing in on action that you can take, in the same way, absorb the wider implications of colonization, genocide, but bring it down to a topic. Find yourself a niche topic that either you enjoy, or that you're good at, or that expresses you and your particular perspective. And develop your skill there.
Yeah,
that's one way. A sort of a mental game you can play with yourself, rather than trying to write about everything in one go, because it's just too big, and you really can't, and it ends up paralyzing you, and you end up all frozen and unable to act at all. Instead, find either a place, or a topic, or a person, or a particular event in history, say maybe an interaction between India and Palestine, or from this book, from Navtej Sarana's book. Find an episode from there about a historical interaction between India or Indian people, or the Indian government or not, and Palestine, and dig into it a bit. Find out something new, or something that hasn't been exposed before. in media, and try and do that. That's another way to try and narrow yourself down so that you can actually function within defined boundaries, and you'll find very quickly that you'll be able to expand and become a specialist and become a sought after voice in that particular field.
And with this, I would like to give you one example for when I was doing the study, and there's something which I found which was never discussed about. For example, Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru had a lot of Jewish friends. In the Second Roundtable Conference and many others, there were a lot of Jewish friends and Zionists also who often got into touch with him and tried to talk to him. Gandhi often used to say that he doesn't really know much about Judaism. He would learn to know. There was a Palestinian who came to India in 1930s. And his name is...
That's in these stories. That's in this book and also in my book as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I will figure out. It is his name.
The Mufti. The Mufti came.
The Mufti came, and not much is written about it.
Not very much at all. No, he was. Part of the reason is because he was very anti-British, and so the people who were writing the history at that time were the British, and so he was demonized.
Yeah, Musa al-Alami.
Musa Alami as well. Yes.
Yeah. He visited in 1930s to talk with Gandhi. It's not there. I tried very hard to find in the archives, but again, you understand archive being state institutions and the politics of it. So that is there. And we now come to, first of all, I would like to, and I'm not going to edit it.
I'm not going to forget the poster because I'm also being asked, I can see in the chat as well.
Yes.
About the poster.
And I'm going to apologize for using the word prop.
That's fine.
No, I'll be very British. I'll say sorry 100 times. I apologize for using the word prop. I'm sorry. This is
an ongoing thing between me and Mahmoud as well. Mahmoud always telling me to stop saying sorry.
That is. You can't do anything, Mahmoud, sir, about it. So yes, what's the story of the poster?
We have a lot to apologize for, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, okay. Very quickly, because there's you can write a book about this poster as well. The poster was designed and created in 1936 by a man called Franz Krauss, who was a Zionist immigrant to Palestine from, was it Hungary or was it Bulgaria or Romania? So I think somewhere in southeastern Europe. But he was working for the Jewish Agency at that time. This is pre-Israel, pre-48, right? And it was used as a tourism poster, as a poster to encourage more Zionist immigration to Palestine, pre-48. I don't know, can you see it fully? Yes, you can see it fully, yeah. And it's this beautiful image. It's taken from, it's a view from the Mount of Olives overlooking the old city of Jerusalem. And you can see the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque just behind you can see the walls and the dome behind it. And the old city of Jerusalem is behind that as well, and sort of framed with this beautiful olive tree curving over the top. And it was used as a tool of encouragement for Zionist settlement pre-48, and then post-48, when Israel created the state, or the state was created. The idea of saying visit Palestine obviously was no longer desirable for Zionist opinion or for Israeli opinion, so it vanished, and it was out of sight for a long time, and it was it wasn't publicly known about at all. In the 1990s, it was rediscovered. I forget exactly what the story was and exactly who the person was who rediscovered it, but it was found again, sort of in an archive of historical posters from Palestine. But obviously now, in the 1990s and thereafter, it takes on a new depth, because now you can see a historical image which is evidence that there was a thing called Palestine pre-1948, and the history of Jerusalem did not begin when the Israeli settlers arrived, and all the rest of it. So it became absorbed into the Palestinian national sort of movement, and it became a tool of resistance. So
Wow.
it's now sold. Prints of it are sold widely, all across every souk, every shop in Jerusalem that does this sort of thing will have a poster of Visit Palestine. You'll see it in many places where you go. It's also been used by Palestinian artists who have taken this original image and adapted it. Putting an image of the apartheid wall, the 8-meter high concrete wall that Israel has built through the suburbs of Jerusalem, like putting that across the picture, or other things, other adaptations. But it's become a tool that's used in Palestinian popular culture now as well since its rediscovery 25 years ago.
Wow. It's on the apartheid wall, I went and wrote justice with a stone as a question mark. And then within 5 minutes, the Jeep came, IDF Jeep, and just erased it as if nothing was written. So I understood why this apartheid wall is so clean. Not that people have not written, just that it's been erased.
It's clean on one side and it's not clean on the other side.
Yes.
So on the Israeli side, I think there's nothing at all. And on the Palestinian side, obviously, there's lots of art and lots of artworks and lots of resistance art and everything.
Yes. Even Banksy, who I don't know who he is, but yes, even
He's
Banksy.
A British sort of celebrity artist, kind of.
Yeah.
Who's kind of mysterious. You don't really know who he is. He kind of keeps his identity hidden.
Yeah. And with this, both of you, thank you so much. And shukran, Habibi. For Muna sir, I'll say Rohi to you. And Matthew sir, I'll just, for facilitating and for doing this and for being that agency to speak to the other half of the world.
There's no other half. We're all the world, and it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me as well. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you and delighted to meet you on the screen as well.
And I know why now that you're a very good broadcaster, because of your voice. One can listen to it for hours.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's you see what that say. I can mask whatever I'm saying with this sort of mellifluous BBC voice. You see, so you're lulled into a false sense of security, so that I can say anything and just have it come across well.
It is a very, very soothing, rich timbre of your voice, which, very good, very good. And thank you to everyone who joined. Anurag, the question we'll not answer because then you'll buy the book and find it yourself. That is the insight that I would ask you to do. Yes, it's a very interesting question.
It is a very interesting question.
Yes.
The quick answer is no. That's not what this book was about. This book was about the people of Gaza. But yes, it is an interesting question.
Yeah. And the point is that I hope I've been writing more from the West Bank and the silent annexation of it. Over the period of time, the Indian media allowed it to be published. Over the period of time, the intensity, frequency of it has lowered down if you're not from the elite group of the society, which means retired ambassadors or elite scholars. So one of the reasons why I started this platform, to be honest, was because in July this year, I just hit the Nadar point. And I felt that if I'm not doing anything for this region that I love so much, and especially in all of West Bank, the place I really love a lot is Hebron, then I'm not doing anything in life. And that is why I started this. And every month is, we just take a leap and then the net appears. So that is also there. So thank you so much.
Credit to you, because acting, doing something, addressing the fact that you're in a nadir and then creating something that has such value and such meaning and such purpose for the students as well who are joining us and everybody who can see this, that's credit to you.
And Palestinians can write. That is something
right.
Maybe that's what we should say also at the end, that this book is not the one definitive, final, collective, comprehensive, complete book on the Palestinian writings. This is one attempt by others. Palestinians have wrote, they will continue to write. there's an incredible amount of young and old expert and creative and fiction and non-fiction writers. Their books are there. They should be sought, because only on the collective writings that you can understand and appreciate the Palestinian depth of history and literature. And I will also say at the end that it is also important to remember that we all have responsibilities in this world, because if this genocide will be allowed to happen unchallenged and unpunished and without any questioning afterwards and without any justice, and at the end, it's a very bad news to our generations to come, whether we are in Palestine or whether we're in India or we're in France or the US. This act of aggression should not go on unchallenged, at least. And this is a moral duty, as Matthew started saying, to act.
Yeah. So thank you, sir, and shukran, Habibi. And mashallah, we'll meet face to face, and it's my dream to come back to Jerusalem.
Inshallah.
And I hope that it happens. Otherwise, I'm again ready to fight with anyone. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you very much indeed. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.